next up, we have a feature that we can use in SQL Server 2008 and higher, but we have to be running expensive edition to use this. In SQL Server 2016, I think it was Service Pack 1. I always have this mental thing where I'm like, was it it was the first Service Pack. We did get a lot of new developer features that are now available in lower editions for 2016 Service Pack 1 and higher. This feature was not included in that. This feature is still expensive. So question about licensing. If we license SQL at the host level, we can spin up as many VMs as we want without licensing them individually. Yes, if we're licensing at the level of the hosts, we don't have to pay per core for every single VM. And this can be quite efficient if you have enough VMs that it makes running SQL Server that it makes sense to license at the host. There are some folks out there who, okay, we have one SQL Server VM, but it doesn't need a whole host. It's small enough that it doesn't, and so we still license by the VM. So yes, licensing by the host can be fantastic. You have to be at a certain scale before it makes sense. Even when we're licensing at the host, often what we want to do is we want to get the most out of that host that we can. Tuning parallelism inside the VMs can help all your different VMs be as efficient as they can with those processor cores at the host level, and can help them not exist within a host without having to, oh, we need to add a new host, and that's a big chunk of licensing because we're doing enterprise level licensing. It's generally enterprise level licensing at the host. But yeah, it can be great. Agreed. It's always tough when you talk to someone who's like, they're like, yeah, I wish we could license at the host, but it just doesn't make sense for us. So we're stuck with these little tiny licenses, which are still expensive. So Resource Governor is another option, and we can mix and match all of these. So I can have database level MAXDOP set, instance level MAXDOP set, and use Resource Governor also, and I can use query ends, which we're going to look at next. I can configure MAXDOP in all manner of ways. Hopefully I do it wisely. The Resource Governor method, especially the implementation I'm going to show you. What we're going to show here is Resource Governor forcing a query to be single threaded. And this is really weird, and I'm not that fond of it. So this you can use this. You can use Resource Governor to set the DOP at different levels for queries, which are classified based on a formula you provide. So let's take a look at setting this up. You'll see what I mean. The first thing I'm going to do is create a resource pool named MAXDOP demo. And then I'm going to create a workload group that uses the resource pool. So I have a pool of work, and I'm going to classify people who connect into that group based on, I get to decide who gets classified in there. When I created the workload group, I said, okay, anybody who's in this workload group, they are going to be single threaded. And this is a way that an administrator can control how many cores users get to use, even if the user is providing a hint in their query. It's a little complicated how that works exactly, though. So I have said anybody in this group can only use one core. Well, who's going to be in the group? I'm going to create a function that determines who is going to be in the group. My function is named classify this, and my function, this, by the way, is not, I did a very simple classifier function, just looking at the suser sname, the username. It is possible to spoof different usernames. There are ways that, and also like, you can also classify based on things like the application name connecting. There are ways that you can say, oh, make my application name X, Y, and Z. So this isn't a super secure classification method. You get to decide how you want to classify this. But I have said, if the user is derp Kendar, that's who I am connecting as, then they end up in the pool single threaded only, which is saying MAXDOP 1. Otherwise, they end up in the default. The default resource pool doesn't have a limit on MAXDOP. So I've created my function classify this to make, we can only have one classifier function active at a time. To make it use my classifier function, I alter the resource governor and tell it who the classifier function is, and then I run a special reconfigure command to make it take effect. It's not the reconfigure related to SP configure, it's the special resource governor reconfigure. So I told it just now to use my classifier function, and then I reconfigure. I can see that my classifier function is enabled. Here's the ID of the classifier function. I could use a function to figure out the name. It is, in fact, classify this. I can also look at my workload group and see, yep, I've got a workload group whose MAXDOP, which for unknown reasons does have an underscore in it. Usually MAXDOP does not have an underscore, but when it comes to resource governor, it does. Because reasons, that's just how some developer did it. So that resource group is set up. It all looks good. But if I test this now, I should see MAXDOP 1, it seems, because I am logged in as derp Kendar. It is going to classify me. Well, if I look at estimated plan here, I just did Control L. Oh, and I need to get into the right database before I do estimated plan. So now I use the correct database and do estimated plan. I still see a parallel query. And this is an estimated plan, so I don't see any actuals. And another thing to know about estimated plan here, if I look at this estimated plan does not have information about the degree of parallelism here at all. Well, what query cost did I get? I got 503.782 as my query cost. All right, well, let's go ahead and run this and get an actual plan. Well, that finished pretty darn fast. That finished in 1 second. Looking at my actual plan, I'm still at DOP 8. Well, that's because my classifier function is only run for new connections. I just set up resource governor in this session and stayed connected and tried to test it. I have not been classified because I need to actually reconnect, reset my session in order to be classified. So if you're first time working with resource governor and you're testing it on yourself, you often will have to, if you're testing it, say disconnect, and then I want to connect back to the instance, because here, right when I connected was when I got classified. Well, now let's look at our estimated plan. I need to use the database, and let's look at our estimated plan. Control L, and hey, wait a second. Still seeing all these parallel operators in here. I should be getting classified at degree of parallelism 1. All right, well, let's run it. I do still have my actual plans on there. And hey, at MAXDOP 8, instance level, we have MAXDOP 8. At MAXDOP 8, we were finishing in 1.5 seconds. I'm now at 11 seconds, 12 seconds. So it does appear that we have managed to change the execution. We are governing our query. The query plan still showed parallelism, but I am, in fact, now being restricted to only 1 core. We're now at 28 seconds. It should finish in around 40 seconds. So we're at 31 seconds. This query is much slower at MAXDOP 1. We actually haven't tested this query at MAXDOP 1 yet. And okay, we're finally getting there. 42 seconds, 43 seconds. It's 40 seconds-ish. We may make 50 this time. There we go. We got 47 seconds. And this is one of the weirder things. And if I had to troubleshoot this without knowing what was going on, it would be baffling. And when I finally figured out that it was resource governor, I would be really irritated. Because it's just so crazy. I have a parallel execution plan. This plan was optimized to use multiple cores, but when I look at it, things look really weird. And note, I wouldn't see this in the estimated plan. In the actual plan, I see degree of parallelism 0. What? What? Did you use all my logical cores up to 64? I only have 10, so it would be 10. This wasn't degree of parallelism 10 actually, though, at all. If I look farther, I can tell. If I look at thread stat and expand thread stat, all I see is branches 2. There's no more information about threads. This was executed single threaded. There is not a lot of thread stats, but it looks really funny because it's a parallel plan. Well, let's dig into some of these operators. Let's dig into the clustered index scan here. When it's run in parallel on my actual time statistics, I will see information for each of the threads. Now, this query was actually run single threaded. All I see is all threads here, which is a single thread, but this is its stats. Now, it is still true. The rules for row mode and it including the child operators is still true. This one has no children, so we can see that using a single thread, the elapsed time and actual time stats for pulling the data out of this large table was 28 seconds this time. Not 1.5 seconds elapsed time, but 28 seconds doing this all with one thread. And, you know, because the one thread has to do this stuff and then do this stuff. And then, you know, it's hard at work here having to do all this stuff. Resource governor. So we can use resource governor to set parallelism, but the weird thing about resource governor, right, is it's not talking to the SQL Server optimizer. This query was not optimized to run single threaded. This query was optimized to run in parallel, and then we forced it. We governed it at execution and was like, no, you actually just get one. Resource governor doesn't talk directly to the optimizer at execution time. It governs it. And that's kind of a dirty workaround, if you ask me. Like, it can come in useful. I'm not saying I'm above using dirty workarounds. Sometimes we just don't have other options. But this is not my favorite option because I would rather SQL Server optimize the query for parallelism or for single threaded, right? I would rather it not optimize for one thing and then execute it in another way. Of course, we can use resource governor to use different DOPs as well. All right, well, what if we have this? Let's change our workload group. Let's alter our workload group. And we're going to set, so right now our instance level of parallelism is 8, and we don't have the database level set. Let's go ahead and tell resource governor, okay, and the name is now wrong. I'm leaving the name as single threaded only, but I'm saying anybody in single threaded only gets MAXDOP 6. The name is wrong. I'm going to change this back so I don't screw up and accidentally save my script the wrong way. To make this take effect, I need to reconfigure resource governor. After I reconfigure it, it does take effect immediately. I don't have to reconnect. So now that I've set it at 6, I'm going to go ahead and run this with actual plans enabled. We should get MAXDOP 6. Yes, it doesn't take 40 seconds any longer. Looking at my actual plan, I did get DOP of 6. Okay, well, what if I also set my database level? Who's going to win? Let's set the database level to 4. Database scoped configuration is now set at MAXDOP 4, and that takes effect right away, right? So I did do it. Database scoped configuration is at 4. So I've got instance level at 8, database level at 4, resource governor at 6. Let's see who wins if we run the query plan. The winner is the degree of parallelism is 4. Okay, who's 4? Let's make sure. Resource governor was 6, database was 4. In this case, and I actually tested this the other day and thought I got a different result. I have a correction to make in the slide because of this. The database level setting 1. The database level setting 1 because it is lower. So let's change the database level setting. Let's change the database level setting to 7. We are going to set this database 7, so now we have instance level at 8, database level at 7, resource governor at 6. We are going to run our query again. Oh my goodness, SQL Server, could you be more complicated about this? All right, so let's look at what we've got here. Our winner this time is resource governor. The minimum set, and this is what happens with query hints as well. The minimum is used. So the degree of parallelism of resource governor this time is 6. It was lower than the database setting. The lower setting, the minimum setting 1. Let's change the database setting to 5. Lower it from so that it is now lower than resource governor again, and it should start winning again. Now it's set to 5. Now when we run it, do we get 5? Yep, degree of parallelism is 5. So, okay, database level setting is at 5, resource governor is at 6, instance is at 8. What if we add another level? What if we add a hint? We are now going to run a hint here. Let's go ahead and just for fun, let's make it 3. So now hint is at 3. Like who's who? This gets so confusing to manage, but at least we can actually see who's who, right? So we can select the resource governor is at 6. Looking at our database scoped configuration, the database scoped configuration is at 5. So database scoped configuration has been winning. Our query, however, is going to hint MAXDOP 3. So the query is hinted lower than the database level and lower than resource governor. If we look here at the, where is my DOP? Degree of parallelism, there we go. The lowest one here. So you'll see on the internet, you'll see statements that you can't override resource governor, which I guess is kind of true, but the truth is you can underride resource governor. If resource governor is configured and we have a hint active, resource governor will win. Resource governor will win unless the hint is lower than resource governor. Same thing, it looks like I actually had this wrong. I'm going to have to correct this in your PDFs. Same thing with the database setting. If the database level MAXDOP is set, it will win if it is lower than resource governor. All right, confusing enough? So what we're going to do now is we are going to get rid of our resource governor configuration. So I am now saying disable resource governor, clear out who the classifier function is, get rid of my classifier function, get rid of my workload group, and get rid of my resource pool. I've just cleaned everything up. It's real easy to recreate it if you want to. And just for fun, I am going to reconnect for good luck. Come on. So let's disconnect and let's connect. So now what do I have set? Now resource governor is not set, right? We can confirm that by looking at the resource governor views. We have internal pool and default. That's normal for my edition of SQL Server. We have no classifier function. I do have my database scoped configuration set at 5. That is configured. Oh, no, I have it at 0. So I reset it to 0. I am in the master database. That is why it is set at 0. I was like, I could have sworn I had it at 5. I do have it at 5 in this database. It is database level. So going into the right database level, it is at 5. So the question is, so basically the lowest MAXDOP wins. Yes, basically the lower MAXDOP wins when resource governor is involved. This rule only applies when resource governor is involved. If resource governor is not involved, then it is more simple and straightforward. If resource governor is not involved, database overrides instance, hint overrides everybody, whether higher or lower. Resource governor just adds a lot of confusion into it. So yes, you are correct when you have configured resource governor to change MAXDOP. If you haven't configured resource governor, life is simpler. So right now we are simpler. I've gotten rid of resource governor. We have MAXDOP 5 for our database. We have, let's look at sys.configurations. We have, oh, I see, I'm looking at the wrong one. For MAXDOP at sys configurations, we have 8. So right now, MAXDOP 5 would win in our database. If I hint, let's hint MAXDOP 10. Let's hint higher. I'm going to say for this query, use all 10 cores. For this query, I do get a parallel plan. It's really fast. It's using all 10 cores. What's our estimated cost here? I'm curious. 503.782. And our degree of parallelism does come through at 10. So I hinted higher than MAXDOP 8 at the instance level. I hinted higher than MAXDOP 5 at the database level, and my hint wins. I did use all 10 cores, and I used 11 threads. How many did I reserve? I reserved 20 threads. Yeah, cool. I like things simpler. I do too. This is one of the reasons why I like resource governor. I'm kind of like, as a last resort, like it's an option if you have enterprise edition and like none of the other stuff works for you, but I wouldn't use it because it's going to make my life easier. It's not going to make my life easier. It's going to make my life confusing. But if I don't have resource governor involved, my hint wins. So I can also hint MAXDOP 1. What cost do I get at MAXDOP 1? And for this one, I'm just going to do estimate a plan because it takes 40 seconds. But notice when I actually tell the optimizer, I only want to use one core. This option MAXDOP 1, the SQL Server optimizer says, oh, you need a different query plan for that. And your estimated cost at MAXDOP 1 is different. Your estimated cost, if I have to use a single core, it's it's more than 500. This is twice as much work estimated or more. And it also, like, I don't need those repartition threads. I don't have a bitmap operator showing up here either. It simplified the plan. It said, if I'm going to have to do this with one core, this is the best way to do it. And it is, in fact, a different plan. If I don't highlight the hint and I do estimated plan, I have a plan optimized in this case for the database level of MAXDOP 5 because it overrides the instance level. If I set my database level, just to show, okay, we're going to set our database level higher than our instance level. So for our database scoped level, I'm going to set it to 10, right? So if I set the database level to 10, it is now higher than the instance MAXDOP 8. If I run this without a hint, I should get the database level because database level will override instance level. Sure enough, I do get DOP of 10. But if I hint MAXDOP 1, the hint overrides all. So hint overrides database level overrides instance level whenever resource governor is involved. Simple as mud, right? Simple as mud.